close your eyes for a second. Allow me to take you back in time. Back to when watching a Marvel movie felt special. Remember Tony Stark. Remember Steve Rogers. Remember the wonder, excitement, apprehension, espionage, humour, cinematography and artistry. Remember the friendships and the hardships, the teamwork and the sacrifices. Remember the Avengers. Now open your eyes and see how far Marvel has fallen. Rather than eagerly waiting for each new release, now we don't need to wait. No matter when you look, you can always be sure to find a new piece of Marvel homework on Disney+. She-Hulk was a show that embodied everything wrong with this era of Marvel. Ask any fan and I can pretty much guarantee that they will agree. This was the moment in Marvel history where most fans began to wake up and realise that things had changed. No longer were they watching the series they had fallen in love with years prior. She-Hulk was some kind of Frankenstein's monster, a product cobbled together from all the worst aspects of the MCU. The CGI was laughable and the script was designed to disrespect the stories that came before it. Stories that built this universe from the ground up. Like calling Iron Man a narcissistic orphan. This may be shocking to hear, but generally fans don't enjoy when you disrespect something they've loved for over a decade. Not only did this show not respect and understand the complexities of previous characters and stories, it doesn't even understand its own story, where the head writer admitted that the team didn't understand how to write courtroom scenes, in a show called She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This should be a beyond basic line of logic here, but if you don't know how to write a courtroom scene, then maybe you shouldn't be writing a show about the law. Just the legal side, without the superhero aspects, could have made a great show on its own. Just look at Suits. Suits is a brilliant legal show in my opinion, and it's actually seen a bit of a resurgence recently despite finishing over 4 years ago. The law may not sound like an interesting subject, but Suits proves that when done right, it can be a wealth of storytelling potential. Take Mike Ross for example. Mike is a know-it-all genius with a photographic memory, which could be a really unlikable trait for a character to have. But the writers know this, and so they gave him likeable qualities from the very first episode to help balance this out. Like how he's trying to pay for his grandmother's care, or how he cycles to work and wears a cheap suit. All these little things help to humanise his character, despite his superhuman ability to retain knowledge. Now look at She-Hulk. Jennifer Walters is super strong, super intelligent, super successful, so what relatable qualities did the writers give her? Not a whole lot if I'm completely honest. Maybe the fact that she lives alone and is looking for love, but that's about as deep as it goes. This is why I believe so many people have found her to be an unlikable protagonist, because her powers outweigh her struggles. Even the billionaire narcissistic orphan was more likeable. Because yes, he's incredibly intelligent, but his problems outweigh his powers. Tony Stark is constantly trying to live up to his parents' legacy, his self-hatred, trying to atone for his past mistakes, and despite his suave, privileged personality, we can clearly see that below the surface he covers his insecurities to avoid getting hurt. She-Hulk has none of this likability. Where Tony Stark works in his suits in his free time to atone for his past mistakes, Jennifer Walters drinks and watches TV. Not exactly the most compelling or complex character traits. It's really a shame that She-Hulk turned out as bad as it did, because I actually had a lot of hope for it at the time. After all, the cast seemed great. The Good Place is one of the most heartfelt, well-written and original sitcoms I've ever seen, so I was really looking forward to seeing Jamila Jamil play a villain in She-Hulk. After seeing her brilliant performance in that show, as well as her marketing for She-Hulk, overall I wasn't disappointed. She was one of the better parts of the season. It's just a shame she wasn't given more to work with. But the same goes for Tatiana Maslany as Jennifer Walters. She played several completely different clone characters in Orphan Black, so I know for a fact that her acting range is impeccable. Each character genuinely felt like a different person, ranging from a businesswoman to a psychopath. So with such great actors at your disposal, I need to place the blame on the writers. Like so many recent Disney projects, the writing and creative direction is where She-Hulk falls on its face. Also, leave a comment if you've seen The Good Place or Orphan Black. If you haven't, I highly recommend watching both of them if you've got the time. The big finale of She-Hulk sees Jen literally break the fourth wall by leaving her series on Disney Plus and entering a behind-the-scenes series in a hunt to find Kevin Feige. After looking through Marvel Studios, she comes across the Kevin robot, and we learn that he is the one who generates all Marvel projects. First off, I have no problem with breaking the fourth wall. When it's done right, it can be a really interesting way to deliver jokes and provide exposition, but when done poorly, it can damage the rest of the stories in said universe. A few of my favourite examples of characters breaking the fourth wall are Deadpool obviously, the Watcher and Ultron from What If, as well as the Doctor from Doctor Who. More specifically, Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor, and his famous rambles to the audience. Doctor Who has a long history of breaking the fourth wall, going all the way back to the first Doctor when he spoke to the camera to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. But my favourite is when characters break the fourth wall in a subtle way. Like during Matt Smith's regeneration. He looks at the camera and says, "I will always remember when the Doctor was me," clearly talking to the audience. Or when Martha smiles at the camera during the climax of Journey's End. What I mean to say is breaking the fourth wall can be done successfully, but I don't believe they achieved this success with She-Hulk. Let me explain. Although I did enjoy seeing her break through the Disney Plus home screen, that was fun, but I hated when we walked through Marvel Studios and met Kevin. This moment broke my immersion in a way I can't really explain. It puts the rest of the MCU, everything that has come before it, into a new context. It makes everything feel less significant. Rather than feeling like you're watching a real story unfold, you're suddenly reminded that this world is just words on a script that can be changed whenever a corporation desires. Of course, I can't talk about She-Hulk without further mentioning the CGI. Marvel was once known for their impressive effects. Just look at the Iron Man suit in his first movie. Well over a decade has passed, and somehow Iron Man's suit still looks far more realistic when compared to the much more recent Ironheart. I know that She-Hulk is a TV show and doesn't have the same budget of a full Marvel movie, but honestly I would rather they just painted her green like Hera or Gamora. Give her a muscle suit and some stilts to make her taller, and then use the rest of the money to hire a better team of writers. It may not have the same budget as a Marvel movie, but as I mentioned, even those don't seem to have good effects anymore. Probably mostly because of the short deadlines and sheer quantity of projects they need to complete. Marvel is stretched too thin. This is most obvious in Ant-Man 3, Ironheart's suit in Black Panther 2 like I mentioned a moment ago, and Thor Love and Thunder. This is what I really wanted to discuss in this video. The MCU once felt special, like a nice meal at a fancy restaurant, but now it feels like fast food. It feels like you're supposed to consume the content and then forget about it. It is a never-ending stream of low-quality content that is slowly killing their brand, killing the reputation they spent over a decade building. They seem to have lost sight of what made the first 3 phases so exciting. This should be incredibly simple to understand, but Marvel doesn't seem to get it. When you have less of something, you cherish it. When you have too much of something, you lose interest. It's the basic law of supply and demand. Right now, Marvel has too much supply, and it's causing their product to have less demand. They just need to reduce the quantity of content they're releasing, and put more emphasis on quality. They should be making 1, maybe 2 movies per year, as well as 1 TV show that is actually a TV show rather than a stretched out movie. Something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., something with more than 9 episodes across 1 season. A TV show that allows us time to actually get invested in the characters. They have diluted the MCU to the point of absurdity, all in the pursuit of money, but this has actually had the opposite effect. Their movies now barely turn a profit, and those that do are a rare exception, like No Way Home or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Like I said, the Marvel Cinematic Universe feels like it's stretched too thin, to the point where it's no longer enjoyable. It's like toilet paper and water. If you start to poke at it, it will just fall apart. Over the past year, She-Hulk has received a lot of hate, especially here on YouTube. I think a large majority of those criticisms are valid in this case. I've even mentioned a few of them in this video, but someone on my last video made a comment that I really agree with and think makes a lot of sense in this case. A majority of people who hate the MCU are actually fans of the MCU, or at least they were at one point in time. The reason they hate it now is mainly because they want to see it return to where it once was. They want to see it succeed. And they aren't willing to sit back and watch while their loved franchise is driven into the ground by a corporation that wants more and more content to fill their streaming service. People don't typically hate something unless they loved it at one point in time. If they weren't invested in the series at one point or another, then they wouldn't care enough to hate. They would feel mostly indifferent towards it. We care, we want to see the MCU succeed. So how can they do this? Well, first off, they need to get back to making quality content. Quantity shouldn't be a consideration. If it isn't a worthwhile story that matters within this universe, then don't make it into a 6-part TV show. Also, get rid of 6-part TV shows. If you're going to make a show, then make a show. If not, cut it down, remove all the filler and wasted time, and turn it into a 2-hour movie, like they should have done with Kenobi. They need to get back to the basics and do what this franchise is best known for: an Avengers team-up movie. I know they're building up to Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret War, but the space between Endgame and Kang Dynasty is way too much. To put this into more context for you, did you know that the first 3 phases of the MCU have a combined runtime of 49 hours? Phase 4 alone has a runtime of well over 60 hours. And that's not even including Phase 5, which we're currently well into. And yet there's still no sign of an Avengers movie for at least another 3 years. Probably even longer if the Hollywood strikes continue, and it looks like they will be. Only time will tell if they can turn things around. But what MCU projects are you most looking forward to? You can vote if you go to the community tab on my channel. I was actually one of the few people looking forward to Agatha House of Harkness. Sorry, Coven of Chaos. Sorry, Darkhold Diaries. But from the number of times the name has changed, I can already tell that it will be another cobbled together mess of old and new ideas, with no deeper themes or any meaningful story to tell. Just another piece of content for Disney Plus, unfortunately. But I'm still excited for Deadpool 3, Fantastic Four, and the Avengers movies I mentioned a moment ago. And maybe even Loki Season 2, but I might just end up skipping the rest. And unfortunately I think a lot of people will be doing the same if the recent viewing figures are anything to go by. I just hope Marvel can turn it around before it's too late.